Hello everyone, welcome to my short lecture. This is Lutfur from University of Newcastle. My today's topic is capital budgeting. So I'll first start with a big picture. In a corporate world where ownership and management is different, the most acceptable goal of a company is to maximize shareholders' wealth or maximizing share price. And one key decision that contributes to this shareholders' wealth maximization is investment decision. So investment decision involves finding out an asset that's worth more than its cost. Investment decision is alternatively known as capital budgeting decision, which involves finding out a project that adds value to a company. Now let's see some big capital investment decisions that were taken by some big companies in recent years. For example, Facebook acquires WhatsApp for $22 billion. Glaxo spends $6.6 billion on research and development. And at the bottom, ExxonMobil commits about $7 billion to develop well sats. So you may wonder that how these companies take this type of multi-billion dollar investment projects. Well, that's our focus today. So we will be briefly discussing capital budgeting process, different capital budgeting techniques, their advantages and disadvantages, and their use in the real world. Before that, the central question that we will be answering today is, what's a systematic way of selecting a project that is supposed to add value to a company? So the next obvious question can come, why is it relevant? Is it only because it's a part of our curriculum, or does it have any other relevance? Well, capital budgeting decisions are very important for companies. Every year, companies commit $1 billion in capital investment decisions. A good decision can add significant value to a company, whereas a bad decision can destroy a company. If you look at these graphs, at the bottom, in the left, you can see that Australian mining companies have invested about $100 billion in 2015 and 2016 in capital investment projects, whereas non-mining companies have invested slightly less than that. And the right graph shows the contribution of these capital investment projects to the GDP of a country. So you can see that capital investment decisions are not only important for companies, but also they contribute to overall economic development. Capital budgeting process essentially involves estimating future cash flows, finding out their present value, and comparing them with the initial investment to decide whether to accept a project or reject a project. There are a wide range of capital budgeting techniques, broadly divided into two categories: discounted cash flow techniques and non-discounted cash flow techniques. Discounted cash flow techniques depend on estimating present value of the future cash flows, whereas non-discounted cash flow techniques do not consider time value of money. That's why non-discounted cash flow techniques are less acceptable by finance managers. We first start with a non-discounted cash flow technique, payback period. Payback period is the time length required for the future estimated cash flows to recover initial investment. So shorter the payback period, better it is. Except risk decision is somewhat arbitrary. Companies generally have a maximum acceptable payback, and if the payback period of a project is smaller than this maximum acceptable payback, then a project will be accepted, otherwise it will be rejected. Payback is still used by finance managers because of its simplicity. However, payback period has two major limitations. First of all, payback period does not consider time value of money. That's why it's not a sensible capital budgeting technique. And secondly, it does not consider cash flows after the payback period. That's why payback period may be misleading. Here we have examples. You can see project A has an initial investment of $2,000 and cash inflows are $500 each in year 1 and year 2, and $5,000 in year 3. So you can see that this $2,000 is recovered sometime in year 3. That's why payback period for this project is 3 years. So if the maximum acceptable payback of this company is greater than 3 years, then we will accept this project. Next is net present value. Net present value is the difference between present value of cash inflows and initial investment. So this is how we calculate present values. You can see that cash flows are discounted by a discount rate which reflects the opportunity cost of capital or required rate of return. And this part of the NPV equation is the sum of the present value of cash flows, and we deduct initial investment. If NPV of a project is positive, we accept it, otherwise we reject. Now, intuitively, we understand that if NPV is positive, it means that discounted cash flows are greater than the initial investment. So this excess cash flow is supposed to add value to a company. 3 points to be remembered about NPV. First of all, is it considers time value of money. It means that it considers that $1 today worth more than $1 tomorrow, because $1 today can be reinvested to earn some positive returns. Secondly, NPV solely depends on estimated future cash flows and required rate of return, so it's not affected by management choice of accounting method and profitability of project. And last of all, NPV has an additivity principle. Since NPV is represented in current dollar amount, so if we have multiple projects, we can simply add NPVs to get an accumulated value. Here we have an example. You can see we have a project where initial investment is $700,000 and cash flows are $30,000 and $870,000 in year 1 and year 2. To calculate NPV, we first of all find out the present values, and then we deduct initial investment, and we see that NPV is above 20,000, so it's obviously positive, so the project will be accepted. Last of all, internal rate of return, IRR, which is a rate that equates present value of cash inflows with the initial investment. As a result, NPV becomes 0. If IRR of a project is greater than the cost of capital, we accept it, and if it is less than cost of capital, then we reject it. Intuitively, a project with an IRR greater than cost of capital indicates that the project earns a return higher than its cost, so this excess return can add value to a company. Here we have an example. You can see that we have initial investment, $4,000, and cash inflows are $2,000 and $4,000 in year 1 and year 2. We set this equation equals to 0 and solve for IRR. We get 28.08%. Now, if cost of capital of this project is less than 28.08%, then we will accept this project. Couple of pitfalls with IRR. First of all is multiple rates of return. Conventionally, a project will have one IRR. However, if the cash flow is non-conventional, that means there is a negative cash flow in the interim period, then a project's cash flow may have multiple IRR, which can be misleading. And also, IRR assumes that cost of capital remains same over the life of the project. However, if the cost of capital changes, then estimating IRR can be much more complicated. And also, IRR assumes that interim cash flows are reinvested at the IRR of the project, which is not a very reasonable assumption, whereas NPV assumes that interim cash flows are reinvested at the opportunity cost of capital, which is more sensible. That's why NPV is technically superior compared to IRR. Now let's see how these capital budgeting techniques are used in reality. A survey was conducted among CFOs in the United States, and you can see that 75% of CFOs responded that they use NPV, whereas 76% responded that they use IRR. A similar study was done in Australia, and the rates are even higher now. You can see 94% of the respondents reported to use net present value. So in summary, we have discussed capital budgeting process, different capital budgeting techniques, their advantages and disadvantages, and their use in the real world. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.